Hello, YouTube, or whoever's listening. This is Chance Paladin, and I'm doing another training video. This it's again on internal auditor stuff, but this is focused on the psychology of talking to the other person, the person you're interviewing. This can be applied to any situation where you're trying to get information out of somebody without destroying the relationship, wasting their time, so on and so forth. So let's just get into it. The agenda for this training session is auditing strategies and behaviors. I'm assuming you've read part 1 or already have an understanding of auditing quality. If you actually want to audit, remember there's a big scary world out there. There's lots of people and lots of personalities. I hear all the time, oh, everyone just wakes up in the morning and wants to do good. No. Absolutely, that is not the case. There are some good people out there. Most of them don't want you to know that they're good. Most people that run around say they're good are bad, and most people that walk around say they're bad are either it's a defense mechanism or they're really bad. So we're going to talk about that. If you're at work especially, or even if you call somebody at home or whatever, you gotta remember people have deadlines, difficult challenges, and other hidden situations going on that you might know about. But I will help you with this, and you in turn will be able to help other people with this. First most important thing is to break the ice. That's usually a hi, how are you doing today? How's the weather? Da da da. I call those formalities. But when you're an auditor, it's more than that. It's connecting with them. That whole how's the weather today, blah blah blah. That's all baloney. It's just cheap and easy, and you're not connecting with people. You're just listening for the tone in their voice and their body language, which are good things if you're doing security work, or if you need to seem social when you're really not. It's just fake. But this is connecting with them on a deeper level. It's starting to actually get into their head and get their guard down and get them to actually start talking. As you know, sometimes with a formality, people will start talking. Those people are easy. Most people aren't like that. Those are social butterflies, or they're stressed out and are about to come unglued. This is for everybody else. I always suggest trying to find a picture on their desk of a family member or relative, an animal, a trip, or some key factors, or like if you notice military stuff on their wall, or soccer stuff. Most people care more about their kids than themselves. Some people care more about their pets than themselves, and they won't open up talking about themselves. A lot of people don't like to talk about themselves. That's just the way it is. People who like to talk about themselves are extremely self-centered, usually, unless they've had a legitimately interesting life that people like to know about. Most people don't care that you went to the grocery store today, or gross things like you have a hangnail. It's like most people don't care about your life. You care about your life, whatever. Keep that to yourself. These are deeper emotional psychological things. So although some offices don't allow you to have pictures of family members for whatever stupid reason, they want everything to be whitewashed. Find something. If they look organized, or if they look disorganized, all that can tell you stuff about them, and start to put together a picture and start trying to talk to them, relate with them. As soon as the person gets relaxed, gradually lead into your audit routine. Keep watching their body language. There will be a future video on body language. They almost always like to know sort of why you're there, but if you're following a procedure, what part of the procedure you left off on. This makes it to where they don't have to guess. And this also gets them warmed up because it gets them into their comfort zone. And you want them in their comfort zone. And the easiest way for that is just let them know, okay, well, I was doing X and Y, and now I'm here. So I was hoping you could fill in the next part. And then either they'll kind of correct you and get you headed on the right track, or they'll just keep going, take you where you need to go. It's like taking care of people. Make them happy and comfortable, and they tell you what you want to know. Now, there's a lot of people who go on tangents. There's a lot of other words for this. I didn't write them all here because it would just get distracting, but it's people trying to distract you, basically. It happens so often. What I always recommend is that you immediately write down wherever you were at as soon as they started going off on something. And people are going to do it a lot. And it doesn't always mean they have something to hide. It may just mean that they're a flutterbutt, they're a social butterfly, and they just love to chatterbox, and you should let them do it. But just not for very long. So you immediately write down where you're at, and if they start saying something interesting, write that down too. But don't explore it right away. Go back to where you were, unless where you were going wasn't as important, which means that they failed a little bit because they're giving out more information. But sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you wanted more information, so sometimes going on a tangent is good if you weren't going anywhere. But if you're not going anywhere, or not going anywhere super important, maybe it's time for you to move on anyway. I don't know. It goes hand in hand with not wasting people's time. So, it says here, don't encourage the tangent. If you're a good auditor, a well-trained auditor, you should already be going in the most important path. So you shouldn't need to be encouraging their tangent and going in a different direction. Just write it down and go back to the thread you were on, or whatever you like to call it. Just like you wouldn't, I guess for a fishing analogy, I can't think of anything else, but you wouldn't be fishing and then catch a fish, see a bigger one, cut the line, and start going after new one. You wouldn't do that. You would catch the fish because you would know that that was the fish that you were trying to go for. You weren't trying to go for a different fish. And if you do go for a new fish, you only go for the new fish after you've caught the first one. So, if you're a good enough auditor, you don't need to be paying attention to their tangents. Unless they say something really, really terrible. And again, just write it down, go back to your own, and then you can re-explore it later. Because you might not even want to re-explore it with that person. You might want to re-explore it with somebody at a higher level. So, otherwise it's just hearsay. So, I hope that makes sense. That's kind of a tricky idea. But we'll move on. Distractions and misdirection can be different than tangents. It's still like a tangent, but it has a different motive. It has a different motive behind it. So they're doing it for a different reason. They're not a flutterbud at this point. they're deliberately trying to run you around for some reason. And that's why I use the little twisty road. So you'll hear things like, you ask them how do they do something, and instead of answering, they say, well, how do you do it? Do you have the information in your area? Are you already doing this? Why are you asking me? They'll do things like dragging other people into the conversation who are trying to work and mind their own business. I'll start blaming, accusing, placing responsibility on other people, other departments. Usually the department or people have absolutely nothing to do with this. They just start tossing it out. They will lie. You don't think people are liars? You don't think very many people are liars? When you're auditing, they will lie. You ask them again, another lie. You'll ask them again, another lie. And I don't mean like little lies. They'll toss out. They'll throw like the highest level people under the bus because they think you won't go talk to them. They'll throw their coworker that's sitting right next to them under the bus with a lie that would just take 2 seconds to say, no, that's not true. And they'll even turn around and say, no, that's not true. And then so they'll just say another lie. They'll just keep lying. Because they're scared. Or because they have something to hide. It happens a lot. You'll also notice that they start to get mad. And they think by getting mad that they can scare you away. And I've had this happen. I've had all these things happen to me. But the most irritating one is when you're trying to audit somebody and they won't stop typing. And they're typing really loud. I mean, smashing on their keyboard. Not violently, but aggressively. It's all about intentions here. We're talking about intentions. So keep an eye out when people are being specifically aggressive, because it's something that you'll have to address. And I'll use a quick example here. There was a guy I was trying to audit, and he was smashing on his keyboard. Not violently, but aggressively. And it was hurting my ears. I get migraines, but this was out of control. You know, he had like 8 people sitting around him in their cubes, and I stopped the audit and I said, why are you doing that? Oh, my keyboard just doesn't work. And he begins smashing again before I can even respond. And I said, your keyboard works fine. Can you please let me know why you're doing that? My keyboard's broken. It has sticky keys. And he immediately starts smashing again. And I said, sir, please stop. And the gal with me is their coordinator for all their equipment and not office supplies. Like, she's not an admin assistant. She was like the office coordinator, like coordinates the cubes and the equipment and making sure everybody has what they need to do their job. Not like the ordering person, but it's hard to explain. And so she's looking at me like, what the hell is this guy talking about? and she goes, what do you mean your keyboard doesn't work? Why didn't you just tell me, and we can get you a new keyboard. We can get you a quieter keyboard. And he just starts slamming again. And it was like, you need to stop doing that. You're disrupting everybody around you. We'll get you a quieter keyboard, and we'll get you a keyboard that works, but you need to stop doing that. And he kind of just sat there. He didn't know. He didn't really know what to do, and then he just started typing quieter. His keyboard was just fine. And other people had even chimed up during this and said, yes, this typing is distracting me. And they appreciated what we did, and we made a lasting difference to that part of the office, because nobody would stand up to this guy. But I don't care. It's part of my job. People need to be able to do a good job, and part of that job means not having a hostile work environment. So I had already written down what I wanted to talk about next, and so as soon as that was addressed, we went back to what we were talking about. So I mentioned on this briefly a little bit earlier, throwing people in other departments under the bus. This is why it's super important to have somebody with you. And if English is your second language, or if you're just not familiar with some of the terms I use, throwing people under the bus doesn't mean someone drags you around and literally throws you under a bus that's driving by. It's a metaphor that means you are getting blamed really bad for something that happened that was really bad. So that's why the metaphor is something really serious. You should always have a management representative with you anyway, no matter what. This helps, and back to the lying thing too, this helps protect you, and it protects them, the person you're auditing. It protects the department, and it protects any other department that may get thrown under the bus. This has happened so many times. We'll be auditing, and they will blame such and such department, and you're just standing there with your mouth open because you can't believe what they just said. And you say, that's not what you said a minute ago, because I have it written down right here. Can you please clarify whose issue you think this is? And then they'll blame someone completely different. They'll say, I didn't say that. It's such and such's fault. And then you ask them again, and they blame a third one. And unfortunately, the most severe time this ever happened, I did not have a manager with me because the manager would not take the time. They sent what we call like designates or management representatives, and they didn't know what to do. They just sat there with their mouth open too, because they couldn't believe this person had become unglued. They had lost it. And one of the things I don't think I wrote here is sometimes you have to walk away. And we had to walk away because this gal had become... She lost it. She was completely gone. And you have to have a management representative with you. Ideally, you want a manager, but managers don't always have time. But it has to be a management representative that you really trust, and that they really trust, because they have to take that information back and relay it all. But that's why you turn your head and go, did you really just hear that? And then you have an meeting and say, did you really just hear that? Have them write it down and have them go tell the manager. Sometimes they're uncomfortable with that, which is why you have to be prepared to go tell their manager that their employee just became unglued. Like it was social unrest and rioting in the streets, unglued. I mean, it gets bad. So now I'm not going to say this happens all the time, but when you're auditing for a company with 1,300 people, and that's just in your area, not talking about the hundreds of people, a couple miles away, and hundreds and hundreds of people, up to 1,000 people in 6, 7, 8 other sites, you're gonna run into everything, and sooner or later you run into people like this. So you've got to protect yourself. You've got to keep a management representative with you, and you have to be able to follow what they're saying, because sometimes they might be right. Sometimes it is some other department. You got to be able to write it down, get them back on track, and keep going, hopefully without them losing it. Auditing slowly and methodically. Pause when you can, and let the person that you're auditing take a deep breath. I would say 90% of the people that you're going to talk to, unless you're working in a law firm or something, are not used to getting, you can call it interrogation, you can call it getting grilled, whatever you want. Imagine going to a police station and them ripping you apart. There's a reason why people fall apart, right? It's because the people that are auditing you get to take breaks, and you don't get to take breaks. Eventually you snap. You just lose it. You don't want to be that way. You want to give them a break. And like I said in the last presentation, keep taking down the document IDs and effectivity dates of the documents to prove that you're actually doing your job. So that can slow things down a little bit and be methodical, because you don't want them to put a document away before you've had a chance to write it down. I suggest taking breaks every hour, so that means doing 50 minutes of auditing and 10 minutes of break. If you can't do that, every 2 hours. Never go more than 2 hours without a break. You'll fall apart, because you have to be on top of your game. Maximum alertness on top of your game, and it's exhausting. And always remember, if you're an internal auditor especially, if you have a mature system, everything's going to be fine. The proof is the product going out the door. If it wasn't going out the door, you'd have a problem. So, especially if you're in warranty or whatever, the warranty numbers would be through the roof for liability. The numbers would be through the roof. So, it's good to just chill. And by pausing, I don't mean giving them the silent treatment. I don't mean pausing when they answer and making them feel like they effed up. When you give them the silent treatment, I mean just chilling for a second. Taking a drink of water, which I address later on, is super important. So that's what I'm talking about here. Be flexible and conscientious with the department's time. Do not absorb a department's time resources for too long. They have a full-time job. There's a lot of auditors that don't get this. They've already sacrificed a ton of time for you. Even though they have to, it's still a sacrifice. And you're going to take up more time. No. You take up as little time as possible. You go there, know loosely exactly what you want. Go in there, get it, thank them, see if they have any questions. Make sure you document it all, and you get out. If they have phone calls, let them take the phone call. If customers come in, let them deal with the customer, because without the customers, there's no reason for you to be there. You're only there because they have customers. So those customers have to come before you. You write down what you want and say, okay, maybe are mornings better or afternoons better? When can we come back that it's the most convenient for you? And if you do that, people will talk nicely about you, which is what this is about. Here's part 2 of that idea. If the answers, if the person you audited answers the only question that you have, just let them go. I bring this up in the last one too, in the last presentation. People, and here's the thing, they may still be polite and professional with you, but you're screwing them, and they're just too polite to tell you. But they could lose a sale, they could lose a customer, they could lose anything, but because they're being so professional and polite to you, they won't tell you that. because they don't want to put you off. So what you have to do is you have to rise above. And when you hear that phone call, you be proactive. Do you need to take that? I don't mind. Or if you see their emails stacking up, do you need to answer those emails? I don't mind. I can come back. Or if you see meeting notices pop up, do you need to take those? I can come back. You will... It'll mean the world to them, and it goes hand in hand with connecting with them on a deeper level. Is showing that you really care. You legitimately care about their job. You're not just grilling them and ripping them apart for the sheer sick pleasure. You're meeting them on the same page. Another thing that's really important to this is taking really good notes, reviewing your notes right away. Review your notes before you leave. Before you even leave their desk, especially if you have a couple more minutes. Don't drag it out if you don't have to. But even if you had bad handwriting or something, or if you don't have, or if you can't find which page you wrote the note on or whatever, review your notes before you go so you don't waste their time. Make sure you captured all the evidence. I can't say this enough. Writing down the effectivity dates, the control numbers, do it all right away. The names of the records, write it down right away while they have it out. Do not waste their time. And then here's the people now talking crap. He tries to come back and get more information, and she's like, no, because you caused her to miss her deadline. So she's not going to help you now. She may lose her job now because you effed up. Not because she effed up with her processes, procedures, etc., because you effed up. So don't be that guy or gal. Dealing with threats, this is where things get a little bit dark, unfortunately. The people you're auditing are potentially a blend of scared, tired, and stressed out. This is normal, especially in an economy like this. You'll develop a personal style for diffusing conflict. Conflict resolution, super important. I have a whole nother training on conflict resolution, I believe, so we'll get to that in much more detail later on. I've been threatened before, subtly and not so subtly. I've been intimidated and challenged I don't know how many times. You just get used to dealing with it. You've got to not only grow a really thick pair of skin, but be able to assess the threat level right away. Like, I've had people openly threaten me. And you just go, okay. How serious is this threat? I've been challenged I don't know how many times. That's why it's super important to have your credentials up at your desk. If you want to come to my desk, I can show you my auditing certificates, training, my college degree, whatever. They'll always say, like, you can't ask this question, you can't ask that question. That's not true. They're just creating like false boxes. I don't know what to call it, but false boundaries that just don't exist. And they'll ask how long have you been auditing and say that they've been auditing longer. They'll say how long have you worked there and say that they've worked there longer. It doesn't matter. They'll say they're very busy and they don't have time for it. Just go back to their manager and say, he says he doesn't have time, can I have somebody else please? It's very normal. This passive-aggressive one is becoming more and more and more and more popular. It's a veiled threat. It's basically saying, I'm going to make your life a nightmare, but you're not going to know it was me. Except I'm saying that it's you, or I'm saying that it's going to be me. So therefore, I'm not passive-aggressive. I'm just being aggressive. It's really stupid. It's one of those veiled, very lightly veiled threats. So, I guess I didn't address that one too much. I said, to the guy, I said, look, I'm very patient. So if you want to be passive aggressive, that's fine. I'm going to be here for a very long time. So, and I didn't mean at his desk. I meant I'm going to be at this company for a very long time. So if you want to be passive aggressive towards me, we will have a very long time to sort this out. And he kind of nervously laughed at me. And then we just carried on with the audit like normal. And that was it. And I never had a problem. So, the trained auditor, I already went over that one. The how long have you been auditing worked here one? That one's really messed up. I had a lot of people say that to me. Because they believe that if they're older than you, that it somehow matters. It doesn't matter. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And that's what I would tell them. I would say, I've been here for 5 years. How long have you been here? Oh, I've been here for 15. Okay, well, I perceive auditing as a journey, not a destination. So if you'd help me get this audit over with, I just have a couple questions and then I'll be on my way. So I think that covers them. That does cover them in order, but you get the idea. Leave comments, questions below if you have more questions about this one, because this is super important, which is why I have a whole other presentation on it. Watch out for coaching. Watch out for your auditors being threatened. I bring it up in the last presentation, but I want to bring it up more here. Sometimes coaching's good in a pinch, but it's not as good as proper training and confidence. That's very important. You've got to be able to tell the difference to when people are just repeating something to where people legitimately, deeply, thoroughly know it. So, and at the same time, listen for clues that the person might lose their job if they mess up, just like I said in the last presentation. It's very important. You need to pride yourself on making sure people don't lose their job solely based on how they do in the audit. Everybody's supposed to be open with the auditor. So if people lose their jobs, it's usually higher up, and it's usually because they weren't doing what their manager had instructed them to do to fix something in the first place, which is fine. That's going to happen no matter what. I've seen it several times. The manager told them to do something, clean something up, fix something, and they didn't do it. And they didn't know it until the audit came around, so that person's going to, unfortunately, have to get let go and be replaced with somebody that's actually going to take care of the system properly. Dealing with departmental agendas. This is I don't really know how common this is. It happens though. When a department hates another department and tries to use you as a hammer against them, well, that other department. No. Write it all down and smile. And don't really act on it until you start seeing a reoccurring theme. Everybody's trying to beat up on IT, or everybody's trying to beat up on engineering if you have an engineering department. Everybody's trying to beat up on quality, keeps holding up the line. We're trying to get parts out the door and quality keeps stopping it to inspect. Well, that's what they're supposed to do. So you write it all down. And then kind of try to digest it later. Don't let them throw you off. If it gets too out of control, you have to talk to management about it and say, look, I talked to a lot of people that were throwing IT under the bus. If it's kind of secret, proprietary, internal information, that's fine. But what's going on with IT? Well, we don't have an IT budget this year, so everybody's upset. Oh, okay, that's fine. That's understandable. Every company's going through that right now. So it could be something simple. Or you could find a giant monster of a bottleneck. Like change control, for example. If they say engineering keeps changing the drawings, doesn't tell anybody. Oh, okay. You got a change control issue, and that's super important. So you got to be able to disseminate what people say. Last but not least, people will ask the auditor if they can get more resources. Auditors cannot get more resources. If you want a continual improvement department that can get you additional resources, you have to, and whatever you'd call it, your lean coaches or whatever your continual improvement or business excellence department is, you should have one. Some places have 3, some places have 5. Some places don't have any. If you don't have any, you got to do it yourself. You got to put together the metrics that actually support why you need more resources. You have to have the moral high ground that work takes X amount, and if you give me more, it takes away from here, here, and if you want more people, it can improve here and here and here. But most people don't do that. They just want to bitch, bitch, bitch. And you don't get more resources from bitching. You get more resources by putting together hard facts and proving that you need more resources, proving that you're going to use them properly, and proving where they're going to go. So don't get sucked into that trap. False positives, also known as the auditor's curse. Everything works fine the other 99% of the time. As soon as you show up, everything goes wrong. The systems stop working. They start pulling out the one bad record in the whole entire stack. This is why you always take samples. If they have 100 documents, pull 5. If they have 200 documents, pull 10. If you see a couple good ones, the system's probably fine. You don't need to worry about it. And you only need a couple documents to support your audit report anyway. So just be careful with flipping out over the first document. It happens. It would happen like in every single department I would go to. The first document, every single one of them, always pull would be bad. It was terrible. And I would always laugh and say, it's okay, put that one back. We didn't see that one. Pull out 3 more. And the 3'd be fine. Say okay. So then I'd write those down and say, but if those 3 had a bad one, then you pull another 3 and say, okay, we have a problem. Or say, when I leave, if you could please, on your own honor, on your guys' honor system, could you please go through those and do a review when I'm not here? It looks fine. Most of them look fine. I don't see, any repetitive issues here. I don't see any reoccurring themes. But could you go back through them and just do an internal review, and I'll come back and I'll take a look, and I wouldn't even write it down. But if you start pulling 5 and there's a bad one, pulling 5 and there's another bad one, pulling 5 and there's another bad one, then you've got a repetitive issue, and they need to document and address. But I swear, it doesn't matter what building, what department, people always pull a bad record, and it just happens. Statistically, it's going to happen. So anyway. Also makes people really happy if you don't flip out over the first document they pull. That's just mean-spirited if you do that. It breeds a lot of negativity. And it makes you look unstable. And they're not going to want to pull out another one. They're going to be too scared. Just don't do that. You just laugh it off. Oh, that always happens, because it does always happen. Doesn't matter where you are. It always happens. It's the law of averages. So I try to end each one with a little case study. This actually happened. Management representative for the department brings you to, they say, is responsible for a process you request to validate. You're brought to Person A. Person A is the newest employee in the department and visibly very nervous. They bring out an old user manual with handwritten notes when politely asked where their work instructions and procedures were. You remind them that is just a manual and not their procedures. Except the management representative errantly falsely confirms that it's all they have, even though it's not true. He just keeps saying it over and over. You keep trying to get them to pull out their actual work instructions and procedures, and they won't. And you can't go any further because they just won't. They're just so nervous that they can't function anymore. So, they got a nonconformity. And unfortunately that happens. People get so nervous and they throw you to the newest person. It's just terrible. So the procedures were in their QMS all the time. Their quality management system. Their business documentation, whatever you want to call it. It was there the whole time. They just never brought it up. Even when trying to prompt them to do it, they wouldn't do it. And so it's like, what are you gonna do? You have to write them up. And then it still wasn't a good situation after that. But everybody learned. There was a lot of hurt feelings because they took the audit reports way too personally. But they got over it, more or less, and they were better for it. They improved their documentation. They improved how much they engaged, and it got taken care of. Most of them got over it. There's still some hurt feelings, but you can't make everybody happy, no matter what, no matter how hard you try. You literally cannot make everybody happy. And I'll leave you with this. I'm not sure if I have it written in any of my presentations, but my little mantra that my manager gave me is, he said, "You're not here to make friends. You're not here to make friends. You're here to do your job. You're here to report the facts. You're going to piss people off. You're going to piss a lot of people off. You're going to make a couple allies along the way, people that respect you and want to be on your side. But for the most part, you're going to make a lot of enemies." And I did. I did make a lot of enemies because some people can't handle this. But they have to. It's their job. You have to be able to survive being audited. It doesn't matter if you're on the financial side or the IT side, the engineering side, warranty, compliance, legal. They all get audited. They all have some auditing team or multiple auditing teams that audit them. Everybody gets audited. And hating the auditor doesn't make the audits go away. You'll eventually lose your job if you don't straighten up. And the person in this scenario actually eventually made it up to supervisor. It took 6.5 years, but they eventually made it up to supervisor. And they've got a couple people under them now. They're not a manager, but they've got a couple people under them. So sometimes it's important to be a little stern and follow the rules. It's good. It's good for people if they're strong enough to handle it. If they're not strong enough to handle it, then they need to go, I don't know, work somewhere where people don't get audited. I guess, I don't know, where people never question them. But working in a corporate environment or a manufacturing environment, and there's going to be audits, guaranteed. So don't ever feel bad for having to audit. If you're not auditing, someone else is going to have to be auditing them. Plain and simple. Probably two, an internal and an external. And that's only if they don't handle finances or whatever. Sorry. There's just so many auditing groups for so many different standards and government bodies and stuff. People have to get over it. They've got to learn how to deal with it. And as the internal auditor, it's your job to get everybody trained and prepared to deal with the rest of the auditors. So, anyway, that's all I got. And thanks for watching. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.